When it comes to shepherds and sheeps, or sheep, depending upon what you prefer, we have got to change our imagery because we are Americans and we were raised with Westerns. And you didn't see a lot of sheep in the Westerns. What you saw was cattle drives, herds of cattle being urged on by cowboys on horses and dogs and all that being yelled at. Yeah. Shepherding was very, very different. In Jesus' time, shepherds did not have sheepdogs. I'm not sure if they have them today because they didn't need them. The sheep, and this is why this image that Jesus takes upon himself is so powerful. The sheep would follow the shepherd of their own free will. Think about that. Jesus calls himself shepherd. Jesus calls us flock. People of God are not to be driven by fear, but led freely by love. And I'm not sure that all of those who are given the title or the role of shepherd in the church remember that. You know, the bishop carries the big stick called a crozier. And it's not meant to be a glorified 3-wood or anything like that. It's supposed to represent like the shepherd's staff. And I remember I was taught that, well, the shepherd's staff, it's got that hook in it because every now and then the shepherd need to reach out and grab an errant sheep and pull it back in. That's not why the shepherd had the stick. It wasn't correcting the sheep. It was protecting the sheep from wolves, from those who wanted to steal sheep. The good shepherd truly had the concern of his sheep at heart. Funny thing. Think about shepherds, though, at the time of Jesus. They were looked down upon greatly. In fact, I read this and found it very, very interesting. If, in fact, Joseph had been better about making reservations, if, in fact, Mary and Joseph had gotten a room at the inn when Jesus was born, the shepherds would not have been allowed in the inn to visit him. But the fact that he was in the stable, it was okay for these dirty, awful shepherds to come and visit. But just to remember, sheep are not driven or forced along or yelled at. Sheep are attracted. We, as Christians, as followers of Christ, we can't be motivated by angry shouts. We need to be able to hear that encouraging voice, inviting, not threatening. And maybe there have been times in my preaching when I have forgotten that or harangued people. We are not fleeing before angry shouts, but following an encouraging voice. And so saying that, I just want to share with you a couple of shepherd stories here. A shepherd was herding his flock in a remote pasture when suddenly a brand new BMW appeared out of a dust cloud heading toward him. The driver, a young man in an Armani suit, Gucci shoes, Ray-Ban sunglasses, and Yves Saint Laurent tie, leans out the window and asks the shepherd, "If I tell you exactly how many sheep you have in your flock, will you give me one?" The shepherd looks at the man, obviously a yuppie, then looks at his peacefully grazing flock and calmly answers, "Sure, why not?" Young man parks his car, whips out his Dell notebook computer, connects it to his cell phone, surfs to a NASA page on the internet where he calls up a GPS satellite navigation system to get an exact fix on his location, which he then feeds to another NASA satellite that scans the area in an ultra-high-resolution photo. Young man then opens the digital photo in Adobe Photoshop and exports it to an image processing facility in Hamburg, Germany. Within seconds, he receives an email on his iPhone that the image has been processed and the data stored. He then accesses a MS SQL database through an ODBC-connected Excel spreadsheet with hundreds of complex formulas. He uploads all of this data via an email on his tablet, and after a few minutes, receives a response. Finally, he prints out a full-color 150-page report on his high-tech miniature HP LaserJet printer, and finally turns to the shepherd and says, "You have exactly 1,586 sheep." "That's right." "Well, I guess you can take one of my sheep," says the shepherd. He watches the young man select one of the animals and looks on amused as the young man stuffs it into the trunk of his car. Then the shepherd says to the young man, "Hey, if I can tell you exactly what your business is, will you give him back to me?" The young man thinks about it for a second and then says, "Okay, why not?" The shepherd says, "You're a consultant." "Wow, that's correct," says the young man. "But how did you guess that?" "No guessing required," answered the shepherd. "You showed up here even though nobody called you. You want to get paid for an answer I already knew to a question I never asked, and you don't know a single thing about my business. Now, can I please get my dog back?" And if any of you here are consultants, please don't take that last story personally. It just... And then this one, which is, I think, much more touching. After a large dinner at one of Hollywood's stately mansions, a famous actor entertained the guests with stunning readings of Shakespeare. Then, as an encore, he offered to accept a request. A shy, older priest asked if he knew Psalm 23. The actor said, "Yes, I do. And I will give it on one condition, that when I am finished, you recite the very same psalm." The priest was a little bit embarrassed, but consented. The actor did a beautiful rendition. "The Lord is my shepherd, there is nothing I shall want." The guests applauded loudly when the actor finished, and then it was the priest's turn. He got up and said the same words, but this time there was no applause, just a hushed silence and the beginnings of a tear in several eyes. The actor savored the silence for a few moments and then stood up and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you realize what happened here tonight. I know the words to the psalm, but this priest knows the shepherd." The good shepherd, the noble shepherd, is gentle and inviting and loving. And no matter where we are, he constantly invites us to come, to follow, to green pastures.